Well, the new president joins us now in studio. Peter, you're very, very welcome indeed. I suppose the first question must be exactly how much influence over the affairs of the GAA does the president have?
Well, I suppose if you look at it technically, he has very little control over them. He has influence, but he certainly doesn't have any technical control. In other words, he can't change anything. He has to go to Congress to get changes in policy, and he has to go to Central Council to get changes in procedures and changes in the way in which we operate things. So, same as any other member of the association, he has one vote at every time he attends a meeting, and apart from that, he has no greater right to his say than anyone else. But I would have to say that the president, by virtue of the fact that he meets so many people, that he's involved in so many committees, he does have a certain degree of influence.
I suppose a guiding influence as much as anything else, and very much as well, I suppose, the image of the association.
Yes, the image of the association is obviously something that's very important, and the president is frequently seen as the upfront man, if you want to use an expression like that. And to that extent, he certainly has an influence on how the association is perceived. And that would be one of the roles of the president, and certainly it would be how I would see the role of the president. Not the only role, of course, but it would certainly be an important dimension to his role.
Now, obviously, you've come into the next 3 years with your own ideas and ideals. Looking critically at the association, what would you think is the most important thing that needs change just at this time?
Well, I suppose we've got to market the association, its games, and the association itself, its ideals. We've got to communicate better. I suppose marketing is all about communication in the end of the day. So we're in the marketing business, the education business, the communication business, whatever expression you want to use for it. That, I suppose, is the area that we have to tackle immediately. There are changes required possibly in our games. There are maybe changes required in our game structure. But essentially, I think what we've got to do is sell the two best games, the two best field games in the world to the people of Ireland and to the people outside Ireland, of course, if there are people outside Ireland who are interested in buying them. But certainly to the people of Ireland, we've got to sell our games that little bit better and promote ourselves significantly better.
I'm sure you're well aware that it's a constantly levelled criticism of the association that it doesn't sell its games well enough, that everybody says these are two of the best field games in the world, but the association doesn't promote them the way it should. How would you answer that criticism?
Well, I would think that there's a certain degree of validity in the criticism. Unfortunately, I believe that the association gets criticised without justification on many issues and in many circumstances. And I feel that it's a little bit unfortunate that sometimes our own members are the most critical. Now, I have absolutely no objection to our members expressing dissatisfaction with the way that things operate, because I would have to say that on occasions when I wasn't in this position, I have expressed dissatisfaction. I think every member has the right, and not just the right, but a responsibility to express dissatisfaction when he's not satisfied. I do, however, resent a little bit the level of criticism that we get, particularly from members who are not prepared to pull their own weight, who are not prepared to get involved in their own club. I mean, we have here Jimmy Barry Murphy tonight. When he stopped playing, he got involved in coaching. Maybe he should be president instead of me. In fact, he'd probably make a far better president than I would make. But, you know, if someone like Jimmy Barry Murphy criticised the GAA, I would accept the criticism. Colm O'Rourke has been known to criticise the GAA. He's your panellist in the football. I would accept criticism from Colm O'Rourke because I know of the work that he's doing in St Patrick's and Navan. I know that how active he is on the playing front. I can accept criticism from people like that because I know that when people like that criticise the GAA, they're doing it from a base where they themselves are making an effort. What I resent a little bit is the criticism that emanates from those people who really, after their playing days, contribute nothing at all. And while I expect to get criticism from outside the association, I would prefer if people within the association who weren't pulling their own weight would recognise that those of us who are attempting to do something are doing our level best. Now, our level best may not be good enough. And indeed, it's a strong possibility that it isn't good enough. But at least it's the best we have to offer, and we do our best. And criticism for those who do nothing, I think the so-called hurler on the ditch or footballer on the ditch or whatever, I find that a little bit difficult to take, I would have to say.
Peter, the big event of the moment, I suppose, is sponsorship and the new rules and regulations that the association have adopted in relation to sponsorship. I know you're in favour of it. What are your particular thoughts?
Well, obviously, Congress has decided it really doesn't matter now whether I'm in favour of it or not. As a matter of record, of course, I am in favour of it. But and the motion that was passed at the Congress this year, I think, was a well-designed motion. It was carefully thought out by Dublin. It set limits to what we can have on the jerseys, the extent of the size of the logos and things like that. I felt that Dublin proposed a very responsible motion, and I think that what we've got to do now is we've got to ensure that within the limits set by that motion, because obviously we can't go outside those limits, that we can offer something to our sponsorship which, while offering them something that's useful to them, doesn't make the sponsor's position within our games or indeed on our jerseys excessively obtrusive. We will be proposing suggestions to Central Council in relation to updating the regulations which we had on sponsorship previously. That will be happening within the next couple of weeks. Central Council may decide to amend what's been proposed to them, but 2 weeks from now, whoever's on the programme this night, 2 weeks, will be in a position to say the GAA has finally decided for the next year at least what the shape of their sponsorship and their logos will be.
Another hot issue, I suppose, and not disconnected to this thing, is rewards to players, to individual players as regards teams in the game. Now, the argument is back and forth. How do you feel about it?
Well, I think the first thing we have to say, and I think both current and past members of the association, both current and past players, recognise that we play Gaelic games primarily because we like playing Gaelic games, and by and large we don't play them because we want financial reward. However, I do believe that our top players, particularly, that they put in such an enormous effort into playing that if there is a possibility for them to benefit indirectly, and I would never advocate that they should get paid for playing, I would oppose that very strongly, but I think if they can get indirect benefit from their playing, and particularly from the effort that they have put in into making themselves great players, people like Jimmy here, who was a great player, Jack O'Shea, a friend of mine who by any standards was an outstanding player. I think that people like that, if they can benefit indirectly from the fact that they have put such an enormous investment in, they're entitled to a payback. So if RTE or any other element of the media is prepared to pay them to make a contribution, then I believe they should be allowed to do that. I believe that if commercial organisations would want them to endorse products, I believe they should be allowed to do that. However, I would have to say that our rules at the present time don't allow that, and it will require a motion to Congress, and of course until such times as Congress decides that, I would have to apply a rule which says that they can't actually do that. However, we would have to use a little bit of common sense in this, and I would have to say that the association has adopted a very pragmatic and a very reasonable approach, and when people have sought permission to do things that weren't seriously in breach of the rule, by and large they've been allowed.
All right, Peter, well, thank you very much for joining us on the programme tonight and giving us your thoughts, and indeed we wish you well over the next 3 years.
Thanks very much,
Well, I can tell you one man who has benefited from Gaelic games, because if you're watching our Sports World programme here on Network 2 on Friday nights, you'll know
Oh.